Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be going over one of those rare political videos that I'm going to be doing. I don't try to stay in politics. Politics is not something that I'm going to be focusing on heavily in this channel. There are other channels that do that, but I thought talking about this was really important given how people have responded. Just one second. Okay, cool. So how people have responded in light of the Donald Trump rally. I know people are kind of like it's kind of weird. People are kind of getting off the buzz of the VP pick as opposed to the what happened at the rally. Although that's still in a lot of people's minds. But they're focusing on the VP pick, JD Vance, being the VP nomination. And so there's that, but I'm not going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about what happened at the rally. And I'm going to be very vague about the rally only because I don't want this, to be turned down by YouTube. So because they've probably got a bunch of keywords ready to go. So I'm going to be very vague about it. Although it's, again, this is not typical of me, but it is something that I wanted to talk about. Before I do, though, I wanted to clarify something. So let's see if I can present this. Entire screen. Come on. Share. So, all right. So I'd asked the last 2 times, I think 2 or 3 times, about helping a fundraiser for a family friend. She had just lost her son and his family. The entire family died in a truck accident, and so they're all. This fundraiser was for a funeral, and I just wanted to say, if you donated or prayed about it, thank you, because they were able to get it, and so now they have the full funding they need to make sure that a proper burial is done. And like I said before, I know the person who is organizing it personally. And so I just wanted to say thank you very much for doing that. That we were able to hit it in such a short amount of time. That is really great, and I know the family appreciates it. So getting on to the topic that I was talking about, I am, by the way, trying to keep this short. I don't really want to drag this on because it can get dragged on pretty long. So as you know, what happened at the rally, you're hearing people like a lot of people on the left coming out and saying some pretty heinous things, such as like, too bad it didn't hit him in the square. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining. Too bad he didn't hit him in the square. And that's really weird because that's from a Pennsylvania firefighter. This is on Libs of TikTok that I'm getting this. I'm trying not to click it for a variety of reasons. But the person who was shot, one of the people who died, was a former firefighter chief. And he died like literally defending his family, making sure that he would take the bullet and not them. And that's exactly what happened. And so the fact that another firefighter would say like the complete opposite, do the complete opposite acts, is really disgusting. And there were more, like, it wasn't just normal people, right? Like, I mean, it's weird when you have high profile people like Destiny coming out and using very unhinged language. And if you don't know who Destiny is, he had discussions with Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro. He's very good at getting high profile conservatives to talk to him. And Trent Horn also debated him. But there was this. He did a series of posts that were probably the worst I've ever seen, and about another person. And it is. I'm not going to show it to you because like some of them are just really, really bad. and it's talking about the father who had died. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up, so you have people that are high profile saying this thing. Tenacious D said this at a recent concert, like sorry it missed or something like that. You have a firefighter. So we have like all these levels, right? Like we have all these levels of like the top, the middle, and the bottom of people like saying horrendously evil things. And what do you do in response to that? The answer is not scream at them. And I know like that's like incredibly like easy to do now. Like it's really easy to respond to this individual and make his life a living hell for a lot of people can just dump on him really easily. I mean, his name's out there. It's a type of doxing. Yeah, he said something that was horrendous, very evil, but is that going to help him change? Like, we're in like a very interesting position to actually like showcase like what conservative like not conservative but like Catholic charity. And it's really hard because like the temptation is there to just like give a scathing response to that individual, to give a response that is in kind to what he said, basically insinuating the one of the worst evils you can say about happening to a man who used to be the former president. And so like this video isn't like I'm not bringing out any like revelation. I'm not like saying anything. I'm really just beating the drum. That's all I'm doing with this video. I'm beating the drum that we need to, when we see this, we recognize it as evil, but we don't respond with evil in kind. And I've been tempted. I know I've definitely, in response to Destiny, because he pops up on my feed because of a few things, but he pops up on my feed, and I said something, but then I ended up deleting it because it was like, that is not the response I should be giving. It sucks. Like, you really want to do the mic drop answer. You really do want to like bash people, but that's like the polarity that we have in this country has gotten to a level where what happened at the rally happened. And now, don't get me wrong, like I'm, statistician. I understand there's other variables involved, right? Like there's the media throwing out all this horrendous rhetoric that if you are not in the appropriate state of mind, you can very easily get washed up into a horrendous situation where you're promoting physical violence or actually doing it, right? Like when you call someone the 1930s party of Germany that ended up taking hold there, like people look at you less than human. And that has been something the left has been doing for quite a while. And really, we have to question, like, what is our response going to be? Is our response going to be the same? Like, well, you guys are just fascists too. Like that doesn't convince anybody. And it's really, really hard to respond to people when they're online behind anything. Like, it could be their real name, it could not be their real name, but if they're behind something, as long as you're not in front of them, they're willing, like, people are willing to say things that they wouldn't normally say in front of a person because they have a level of protection. It's the same thing. Like, think about it this way. When you're driving in the car and someone cuts you off, I do this, like, I swear, like, I swear at them. Like, and I go, like, I do have this, like, frustration that I do as I'm driving, right? Like, and I know a lot of people do that too. Not to say that it's necessarily right. And you should never go so far as to, like, commit a sin or what have you. But it's definitely something I do to help me deal with literally almost getting into an accident. Okay. And so you know, someone cuts you off, you swear, but if that person was right in front of you, after 5 minutes, some people will swear for like an extended period of time. At that extended period of time, would you actually swear at that person like after the initial event? Probably not. Like you might bring it up to them and be like, hey, you almost got into an accident with me, and we both could have got really hurt, and like my family that's in the back, that would have not been okay. It's not always about like we are definitely in this alpha male mindset, and there are definitely things as an alpha male you want to like have, right? Like you want to have. But the problem with the alpha male mindset is that there's a lot of pagan aspects to it, where it's about showing how big of a macho man you are, and not about, okay, well, what's good for quite literally everybody involved? Does it necessitate that I have to then like show some humility or hold back a little bit? Like, do you have to be meek? You know, because that's what meek is the ability to restrain oneself. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times when you shouldn't restrain yourself as much as I guess some people would feel comfortable with, right? Like if you're defending your family, like you're not going to be meek. You're going to make sure that you're defending your family. But what I'm saying is when it comes to like these interactions online, they're they're almost like an extreme case of what happened in the car, except you can be perpetually like PO'd. I'm trying not to use words to trigger. You could be perpetually PO'd by just seeing like the worst in humanity everywhere. And especially if you've drank the Kool-Aid of what the left has been offering, right? And so again, this is me just beating the drum of we need to promote peacekeeping. We need to promote peace. And we need to take that beatitude very seriously, especially given the situation that's happening, because we need to start actualizing it in a way that it can start mending the divide. Because if we don't ever try to mend that divide and we just keep saying, well, it's super polarized. Like, I mean, I've seen the stats. Like I've seen them in a number of ways. I don't like them. I don't like the fact that we're so divided. We are so divided that it wouldn't be surprised if a CW happened, right? Like a lot of people would be like, oh, that makes sense. Like we've literally made movies in the recent past saying, well, we wouldn't be surprised if the CW happens. And nobody wants that to actually happen, partially because so many people are obese, but that's beside the point of this video. But so I guess like, yeah, I'm just emphasizing like we really do need to get back to the basics of trying to help convert people and understand what we're about, right? Like there's a lot of people on the left that are in agreement that what happened at the rally was evil, was bad. There have been some people who have shown great restraint in not saying certain things, or like saying things nicer in a very direct way. And I'm not saying about the president and vice president. That was kind of a joke. Like they didn't even mention Donald Trump's name, like, which is horrendous. But like the problem is, or I'm sorry, not the problem, but the people who are across the spectrum, like what I said, the low, medium, and high distribution of people on the left of popularity, many of them have been restraining themselves in what I would say a good way. They've cut down the rhetoric. They are trying to promote an understanding that isn't just, hey, we're going to just say the same things we've been saying the last 8 years, because some of them do recognize that. So, whereas others, I mean, they doubled down on it. I'm sorry, they doubled down on it, right? So I don't think the majority of people on the left doubled down on it. And I think a lot of people recognize that that is evil. So don't focus. It's really easy to focus on the minority of people who are saying it. It's kind of like that one point where I said when people think of traditional Latin mass goers, they kind of just automatically focus on Taylor Marshall. Well, like Taylor Marshall is not like times like 650,000 or whatever people across the country that go to the TLM, right? Like he's one guy. So we got to keep that in perspective, that these people who are saying these things are one person. Maybe there's several of them, but that it's, don't get dragged into it in that way. We are made for love, and we're meant to love other people. Obviously God as well, but like we need to practice the second commandment. So I'm gonna go to chat because I've just been ranting, and so I appreciate you guys listening to me ranting. And before I go into chat, I do want to say please like this video if you haven't liked it. And now I am also fully monetized. That's to mean that I'm also like able to get ads on YouTube. And so I want to say thank you very much for being able, or for watching me to get to that point, because it's not easy to do. And it's going to help my family, and I'll definitely be coming up with more things. I think I'm going to be asking Father Eric if we can redo the in the hand versus on the tongue experiment, except use a little bit more money so it looks more pristine. And they're not I have a problem with the shading. Like that's my issue with it, is like the shading of like when you look at the comparisons. And so it's not that you don't see the particles, it's that the shading looks ugly. And so maybe I'm just being a perfectionist, but there's going to be more things that are going to be coming down the pipeline with the fact that this is monetized now, that is going to take a little bit more money. So again, I just want to say thank you very much. Even if you're just watching, thank you very much. So let's back up a little bit, because chat is like going off, and that's great. So yeah, yeah, a lot of people don't recognize that. Like we're still like America is very much in an experimental phase still. Like we're not even at the 300 mark for a country, and like we're an incredibly young country compared to the empires that came before us. Okay, so like it's not like we have like we're the longest lasting now. Like we're one of the oldest countries in existence right now, but we are not one of those countries that, like empires, really. If you wanted to, I would argue that we're a type of empire. We haven't lasted that long, and so we're still in a state of experiment. And it is possible that what we're doing is just going to, like, what we're feeling and how this is all playing out, it's coming to its natural end. And so that may be what's going on here. But absolutely, like we worship in a monarchy, so that's great. Sorry. Let's see if this is the yeah, I mean, like, so I don't want to get like all doom and gloom and stuff, but like, I mean, I do put it in perspective. So like living around, for example, Chaldeans, and understanding why they came to America, which was because they got persecuted by Muslims, and then they came here because we weren't persecuting them. That's like always in the back of my head, where like there's so many people around the world that are suffering at a greater extent than we are. And that's not to say there aren't bad things happening, but I think it does give me a grounding in that we are not like what do you call it? The people who are going to deal with the last tribulation. Holy crap. Like that's, I mean, I think what's it say? They'll wish they were dead, I think is what's stated in the verse in Revelation. So it's yeah. Let's see. So Talib. Okay, that's great to hear. That is an achievement. Yep, blessed are the meek. It's easy to see. So the online, so they're designed to divide us, especially okay, anger because it drives traffic to the content. And so like, so kind of, so the thing with that, because in so I understand the algorithms, like, because like I'm in a field that like it's a very small step for me to literally go into that into that field, because I already deal so much with coding as a statistician. I mean, and what they're using is statistical algorithms anyway. But it's naturally people respond with negative emotions more than positive emotions. Um, so you'll see more anger happening than happy, for example. And then when the anger, like you said, it divides us. How it divides us is it puts us in an echo chamber, and we keep choosing and choosing and choosing that anger over and over again, or that topic over and over again. And all of a sudden, like if all you're looking, like for example, if you start looking at dolls for Christmas and you look at one thing and two things, okay, well, that's not really going to affect anything. But if you choose like it 10 or 15 times in a row, you are now going to have a bombardment of Christmas dolls coming at you, like topics. And so, and I know like most people get that. It's just Christmas dolls also don't cause anger, like you were saying. So, but it's, there's a lot at play, and some of it plays on it in that, what is it? It assumes more so than it actually triggers, right? Like that's what I'm getting at. There's no like trigger that says, well, this is an angry post and this is not an angry post. So that's all I'm doing. That's all I'm long way of clarifying that. So Frank, okay. So that is something that I have made the point with a few people. And I actually don't think that's the easiest way. Um, like it may be the easiest personally, but then you're going to have a whole bunch of people who are still online. And then there's, I'm not picking on you, Mark. I'm literally just going down the list. So don't, like, I'm not criticizing you. I agree that that's like for an individual, that's really, um, that can be very beneficial and help you move towards God. My only reservation with that is the fact that there are just so many people online that need engagement. Like there's some people in Twitter, which is weird because they're on Twitter to begin with. They're on Twitter and they're Catholics and they're saying, well, we don't need to be online and we should just stay off and all this other, to an extreme degree. But then it's like, these are real people you're interacting with. These are real people you're talking to. They are staying a majority of their time. A majority of their time is online. And so to treat it as like fake is wrong, because those people still need to be evangelized to. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's for everybody. That is not for everybody. Just like when I said, like, hey, if you have like the spine, go to Reddit and go like defend everything on Reddit, right? Like that, it takes a particular person to deal with it. And so the same thing in general on social media. I don't think everybody should have social media accounts because I think it's spiritually damaging. And, like when it comes to our kids, like we're very aware like what we're not allowing our kids to do. I just realized that's been up the whole time, so I apologize to everybody in my list. um, uh, right. Well, so okay, so that's really interesting, Matthew, because like meek is something that I've only learned very recently what it means, because nobody has a good definition of it, like at all. Like it's really terrible. Like it, but it's basically about like meekness is shown in, it's not, it rhymes with weak, which is I think where a lot of people go. They go meek and weak rhyme, so meek must mean weak. Which I know we, in other fields, in other parts of the vocabulary, that just doesn't work at all. But for whatever reason, that link is what happens. But it's for those that don't know, it's about the ability to restrain yourself when you can like legitimately, like reasonably go all out. And it's like holding off the sword when you could use the sword. But like, without going into great detail, it's because it is something I'm still wrestling with. It's the ability to have restraint when it's the ability to use restraint properly. And so that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to like overstate anything. So I do that to a fault, and I'm sorry. So K37, thanks. That is actually great to hear. I know his wife's Catholic, his current wife's Catholic, so I don't know where he's at, and I love the tiara. Like, it reminds me of that meme with the Eastern Orthodox. Let's see. Christian, especially with the Beatitudes, is this right? So like, that's what makes it really hard for like paganism getting a stronghold again. Like, that's what it's always been, right? Like, the ability, like, it's not that you, in the middle of like the Roman Empire, when Christianity came about, the fact that people were willing to face death courageously was seen and is seen as a strength that most people don't have, like, at all. And it's kind of like my family watched Jaws today, so it's rated PG, by the way, if you didn't know, which kind of blew my mind. But I remember the opening scene where the one girl gets eaten, and one of the last things she says before she dies is, she says, "I don't want to die," and she's frantically screaming. And I have some nurse friends that have told me stories about people who are just not ready to die. And it's scary, right? Like, it's terrifying to be in that position, to not have hope in Christ. And to be, and I can only hope that when it comes to my time, that I'm not going to be scared of death. And because, like, we all have to face it, right? Like, we all have to face death. And it's just the ability to face death is a strength that I think a lot of people like play down. Like, it's one thing to, again, be the alpha male and to show strength, and showing strength is definitely good when it prevents problems, right? Like, prevents, like, defending your family, right? Showing strength may prevent an attack. But at the other time, or like you said, like, when you're not in a state of, when you're in a state of always like that, you're always in the alpha male state. I'm using that on purpose because, again, like, this is something that's being perpetuated, like, especially with the Chads and everything, which is ironic because it's supposed to be based in all that other, like, logical stuff with the red pilling and whatever. But it's but then you get someone like what's his name? Oh crap, what's his name? Oh my gosh, I can't remember his name. Andrew Tate. There it is. And he's like, a lot of people, when they think of alpha male, they think of him, right? And that's horrendous because he treats women like terribly, and he is exactly the type of person you don't want to be like as a man. He uses his strength for evil. It's not good to be in that situation. But the teachings of Christ, I really wonder, like, someone like him, how does he view the teachings of Christ? Because I think that would answer that question, right? Like, or it's not a question, Matthew, but like, it would be interesting to know exactly how those that are always fending for themselves would answer that question, or at least treat it like they're always fending themselves. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't necessarily need to be in a position where it's fight or flight, right? It could just be like in fight or flight, in that, like, if you don't get your next paycheck, you're not going to survive. It could be that fight or flight, well, I have all this power, I don't want to lose this power, and so I'm always fending other people's off. other people off, kind of like Caesar, right? Like Caesar was always fending people off because they wanted his power. And so that's in a very similar mindset. And so, yeah, but like you bring up a great point there. The Beatitudes present another way of truth, like what I would argue is true strength, as opposed to what I think a lot of people default to. So that went way longer than I expected it to, but thank you for commenting. I appreciate it. And yes, we do. So hard when we were young. All right. Sorry, I'm just reading through through the chat. So that's why it's taking me a bit. Yay, good timing. Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So funny you would say that, and so I'm trying to keep this short, but funny you would say that. I'm going to be waking up early in the event that the rumor proves to be true, and that there is some sort of follow-up motu proprio 3 years out, and so it would be 3 years tomorrow. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm got my phone, and I'm going to be setting it up tonight. And the second I see it, if it's there, I'm not going to be on late, like too long, because I will probably then just go back to bed if it's not there. I'll be posting a live stream like immediately because like it's going to matter to us because we do have a lot of diocesan TLMs, and so it does matter that people recognize what's happening, at least in our diocese. And there's many people from my parish and around that do watch. So I would, it hits really close to home. I do try not to do like news items, but that's definitely newsworthy. That just like what happened at the rally is newsworthy. All right, so all right, I didn't know that, but that's cool. Eastern Rites like are totally getting a showing. That's awesome. Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Like it I consider that religion to be similar to like it's monotheistic paganism in a way, like because of just how it promotes such carnal inclinations. Now that's not to say that there isn't like a lot of philosophers that were from Islam that were like amazing, because there absolutely were, but they also had the problem of coming to the conclusion of, wait a minute, like some of these conclusions don't make sense with what we've been given. So as Pope Benedict XVI, I think it was him, it stated that Islam has a logic problem that they need to get over. And yeah, I'm not here to like, put down Islam, but yeah, it accounts for about half the violence in the world from religious parts. So that's a statistic I don't really find attractive in a religion. It's really cool in that appearing how deep the ethics is. Recommend that you do 7:30 a.m. at the grotto if a band does come down. The problem is I start work at 8. So like, and I remote work. So I guess I technically could just bring my computer and ask for the Wi-Fi, but it's a half-hour drive for me. So I can't do that. It's like I cannot do that. And I'm very big that when it comes to me going to other parishes, I have to get the approval of the pastor there to do that. I don't like just using it as like, because it can very easily look like, well, I'm just using the church as a prop, right? And that's not respectful to the congregation, and it's not respectful to Christ that's in the tabernacle. So I do try not to do anything like that. Oh yeah. So just like I started the earlier, we did have the fundraiser completely supported. That friend is currently in Colorado doing the funeral mass for the family. If you could pray for them, that would be great. Just as it's stated here, tomorrow. I mean, you could pray for them today if you wanted to, but it's going to be tomorrow. So hopefully everything goes well and they have a safe trip, because we're in Michigan and they're going to be buried in Colorado. So because that's where they live right now, or they lived before the accident. All right, so I think that's it, unless anybody wants to derail me for about 2 minutes, ask me some questions. I do want to point out, so I will follow up with what I previously did about the shift in priests becoming more conservative and Orthodox. I will have a follow-up video talking about that study and going more into it with the meat and bones. But then, so Brian Holdsworth, I hope you guys know who he is, because I think he does great videos. Me and him had a back and forth today on Twitter, and he gave me the statistics information, like primarily where he got it from, that he used in his video today. Did it come out today or yesterday? I don't know. I saw it today. And so because I saw it today, or I'm sorry, I saw it yesterday. Sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained right now, but it's I saw it yesterday, and I noticed the statistic about altar servers and how many of those in the priesthood were altar servers. And I think it was like 7 or 8 out of 10 of them like had experience being altar boys before they became a priest. And so I'm going to see if that's the case for a majority of studies that have happened here over the last, I'm going to try to get 20 years. The studies I've already found have it at about 7 out of 10, but I'm going to do a more of a deep dive examination into that to really make the case from a Canadian and American perspective, using those studies showing, no, seriously, like we need to get back to altar boys only. This should be a policy if we're serious about the priesthood coming back. Because at the end of the day, like the exposure for men, like when you have like family or parishes that have thousands of people, and no vocations come from that parish over the course of 10 years, that's a failing in the community. And we have the privilege in our state. It's not in the I don't think it's in the Archdiocese of Detroit, but I think it's Lansing. There's this town called, I believe it's Fowler, and it in the last, I want to say 30 years, has that small town of, I want to say it's like 2,000 people. That small town of 2,000 people brought 22 priests, like got 22 priests ordained over like 30 years. Why isn't that a case study? Like, why isn't that town a case study in how to promote a Catholic community? Because that to me seems like a no-brainer. Like, okay, well, like, what do you guys do? Like, and go into the minutia of what they do and how that community holds itself together, and then promotes 22 priests over that period of time. I don't know if it's exactly 30 years, so don't hold me to that number, but the fact that it's like 22 priests over some time, like that's more than most places in the state of Michigan and the United States. So it's kind of a big deal. Oh, okay, you guys. Okay, cool. No, you don't have to. So because I'm going to be like, if I were to record things, that's different than you just going to mass there, right? That's a completely different level. Not to say like I'm better than you or anything. It's just that's not what I'm saying. It's a matter of if I'm going to be recording a in a particular place, I'm going to get permission from them so that I can do that, because otherwise I just feel like I'm stepping on toes doing it. I don't think it's respectful for me to do that. Going to a Chaldean mass, going to a Byzantine divine liturgy, going to a completely different Latin Rite parish, you can just go, and nobody's gonna question you. But yeah, I hope that's clear. Like the reasoning for it is different. It's not because you're going to worship, or I would be going to worship to record there, and that's the difference. If the ban happens, I'll become say the TLM. Yep. Yep. And sorry, I'm just making sure I'm going through this. Most of us haven't, aren't they? Yeah, there's a place that we go to where we have our backup areas. Like we have backup. So in the Archdiocese of Detroit, there's a few parishes that are closer that we go to if we're not able to make mass at St. Basil. And so it's Our Lady of Convenience situation. Yep. And then, yep. I hate the name. I don't like the name Fowler. I just, it sounds weird coming out, but it's a very devoted city or village. I believe it's a village because it's only 2,000 people. Shows up, starts film. Yeah, that would be a little weird. And be like, yeah, that would be for the Sunday of Saint Charbel. Yeah, no, yeah, better than Fowler. All right, so all right, I think I'm gonna get off. But again, just beating that drum that we I think this is the one thing I think we haven't done as Catholics very well, and that's adapting to how to be Catholic in the mediums that exist. And so we have to be creative with that. And so it's kind of like we have altar rails for, excuse me, I had a burp. Just admit that. Yeah. But sorry, I had a burp. We have altar rails, but those altar rails are movable. So that means that if we had to, we can move them out of place. They're not a fixed point. They're not a fixed renovation within around the altar. That's how we got around, like, sort of speak, that limitation that most dioceses have, where you have to get approval from the bishop to do a renovation at a parish. And so that's what we did to do that. And so in a similar way, we need to, when we engage in the culture, which when you're on Twitter, when you're doing this stuff, you are absolutely engaging in the culture. And I'm going to get off anything that's potentially problematic. Because even with my filters that are on, like, it can still go through, and I don't like that. So I'm not going to post that. But to be fair, we are struggling because our leadership is struggling. Right. Because, like, it's kind of like the same thing when you look at kids. Like, I think I may have said this before, but if the parents aren't enforcing the rules, one of the other kids is going to try to enforce the rules on the other kids and then become, quote unquote, the boss. And then the other kids are going to be like, no, you're not the boss of me. You're another kid. And so then you just have infighting. And that's exactly what we see, right? Like, we see that all over the place. And the fact that we're Americans doesn't help, because we have that Protestant spirit of individualism taken to an extreme end. Like, sola scriptura, for example, is an example of that, right? Like, it's an extreme version of individualism where even if I contradict you and I contradict every other person, it's my interpretation versus yours, and I'm going to take my interpretation. And so Yeah. So right now we have a problem where our parents are in a way fighting, like our spiritual fathers are being either neglectful or fighting, and some of them are actually doing something, and some of them are trying to do it covertly, as to um, not be necessarily, they're not doing anything wrong, but they don't want to get the attention, right? Like, and so there's that. Um, See, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that, but that's great. Like that's that's great. And what's devious about it? So what's so devious about the Protestant spirit is that they have claims to a lot of truth. Not all of it, obviously. That's us. That's Catholics. But they have so many, like it's like it's so close compared to everything else. It's so close, it's dangerous. And it's kind of like this understanding, like academically, from I guess something that I'm more familiar with is a little bit of knowledge can be very dangerous, because it means you don't understand your limitations, and it means that you'll typically, especially if you have a lot of bravado, you'll go off and do things that you really shouldn't be doing. And then your methodology may be correct, but it's wrong at the same time. And a lot of people don't understand that. That's why, like, there are certain, like, some of the studies I've gone over, especially I think with the Catholic schools versus public schools, like the methodology is right, but it's not actually correct, to apply it in that way and use arguments in the ways that they do it, because um, there's a natural component there that you need to take into account. So yeah, and not to get too off. Yeah, yeah. So like I would argue that too. Like, this is Protestantism's natural end. Like, we just happen to be in it. But like, I would argue that because of the robustness of Catholicism here, um, that we're not like Europe. Because Europe, like, what did Europe do in most Protestant states? It buckled, right? Like, Germany is in a terrible state. The UK is in a terrible state. Like, they're birthing, their repopulation efforts are just horrendous. And most Protestant nations are suffering that same thing. Now you have some Catholic countries that also kind of have that, but not to the same extent. Like Poland, for example, is faring much better, from a lot of those dimensions than the other parts of Europe. And so we're kind of like this oddball, but we're also like an island, right? Like, we have a ridiculous amount of resources, at our island. Our island is gigantic. We have very weak neighbors. And so, like, we have this ability to take advantage in a way that other countries in Europe simply don't, without starting a world war. So, uh, not to do a whole history lesson, but it's just like I do think what we're dealing with right now, the election in particular, um, that is a symptom of the logical end of Protestantism. Now, I'm not going to go more into that, because I did say I'm not going to make this like super long. Um, would be great. So I guess, what do you mean by that? Because I've seen a few people talk about Americanism, but like, I'm not going to talk about, like, I can't really talk about the theology, only because, even though that's like extreme individualism, because I'm not a theologian, and unless I have someone who is a theologian, I don't feel comfortable saying that. So like, if there's a particular topic about it, and if that is the case, just let me know, because I can try to, get someone. I've been trying to get like Joe Heschmeyer, which, by the way, like, if you have a way of like being able to contact him, I'd love to have. I have a bunch of questions I'd like to ask him, because with his focus, with some of the like conversations he's done, I would love to ask him about the like Americanism in general, but also like for example, there are things like understanding proper citations with the early church and the situation they were in, because I don't think enough people talk about it from the standpoint, like the early church, from the standpoint of they were in persecution. Why do you think they're going to have paper everywhere with their names on it? That, because like that's always seemed asinine to me. It's like literally if a paper like that gets out, like if a lot of papyrus is just written about everything, all of a sudden like the Roman soldiers know where to go and who to kill, because you're just literally writing too much stuff and people know about it and they know how to get it. And so that's always been really dumb to me, that people like Protestants don't take that into account. So, okay, so I will take that and I will try to get someone to do that. But I will get going because I don't want to. I did say tell my wife it would be short, and even though I'm hitting it like 50 minutes, it's still technically shorter than others. So if you haven't liked it already, please like it. But thank you for listening to my discussion, and I appreciate the back and forth because it helps move along, and it also helps me like better focus ideas. And the fact that you respond so quickly, it helps like refine your ideas as well. So I really do appreciate the back and forth that I get from chat. And so thank you for doing that. Technically. Okay, I'm going to get it. So I'm technically in. So if you have any other questions, just leave them down. Like I said, I also will be having another follow-up video on sacred music because there have been very specific questions about that. So that is the last thing I'm going to say, but thank you for watching and have a great night.